you know, there's no place on earth I wouldn't want to be than right here, you know, in this minute of trying to bring success to one of the biggest football clubs in the world. The basic underlying principles that I want my team to play football that scares the life out of every opposition, mate. That's kind of the end game.
Good evening, good day. If you're out jogging or listening in the car or wherever you are, this is Lee Brown and Ritch Grove. We are back. Yes, your ears are not deceiving you. We have jumped back in for a pod, and we haven't done one since January. I think Man U was the last game.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we both had a bit of a brain fart and decided, well, why the hell not? Let's wrap up the season and see where we are. You guys haven't been clamoring for us to come back, so fuck you. And so anyway, this
I've
will
got a bit
be
of a bone to pick with you, Lee. I've been sitting in this studio for 4 months waiting for you to turn up. This beard, I was clean shaven when we recorded the last podcast. Where have you been?
You got a beard like Thor now. Look at that, a beard like Thor.
Yeah.
Anyway, not only have you been, what have you been up to, Rich?
What have I been up to, Lee? Well, it's been a funny few months for me. Those of you who listen to the podcast who know me through social media as well might already have picked up on it that I've had what we might call a difficult winter. My partner's one of my partner's kids was quite ill over the early part of the year, and so that had to take precedent. And I'm not, sort of using that to leverage sympathy or anything like that, but you have to sort of refocus how you split your evenings and who you're available for while people are in and out of hospital. So luckily that's all resolved now. And then anybody else that knows me might know that I am in the middle of an enormous project at the moment, in that I am building the boat that I live on and the boat that I'm going to have as my new workshop. So I've been sort of knee deep in both of these projects, and for most of the winter, I haven't had, as you know, Lee, I haven't had basic facilities at home like kitchens or bathrooms and stuff like that. So it's been what we might call an interesting few months for me. But luckily now I've got internet on the boat again, and I've got a sink and a toilet, and I've got a sofa to sit on and somewhere to plug the computer in. So hence I'm back. But on the less sort of trivial but probably far more glamorous side of it, what have you been doing? Showbiz personality.
I'll fill in those blanks in a second, but just to say that I just wished we had a time lapse of your boat, because from what I've seen, which looked like a hollowed out sort of bunker, to actually something that resembles a really nice house with shelves and bottles of olive oil on the side there, and spices and ovens, and you've really put a lot of effort into making this place look like a proper home. Picked artwork up now and everything. It's a sight to behold. I'm just waiting for the animals to come in 2 by 2.
Well, I mean, one of the other things that's happened as well is I bought an horse recently, so that's although he's not on the boat,
Okay.
he won't fit through the door. But yeah, the livestock is accumulating, ready for the next deluge.
Well, brother Noah, what I've been up to recently. Well, we were just sort of talking sort of pre-pod, really, weren't we? It's been a bit of a journey for me as well, because I've sort of changed and not changed careers. I left, as some listeners might know, I left teaching to go back into acting, which I did before I became a teacher. I still do a bit of supply teaching just to kind of pay the bills, really. But yeah, I since we last podded, I did a film, which I think we were hoping. I was speaking to the producer the other day. The trailer, I think, is coming out in probably end of June, early July. They're still editing at the moment, so these things take a long time. I mean, it's not like editing on iMovie on your computer or something. These things, like, they have to go through so many processes before they're sort of ready.
Mm.
I don't know really yet what the whole distribution network stuff for it is going to be. I've left that up to them, but it was really enjoyable experience. It took us right back to the sort of Victorian times. I have asked the producer if I can say what it's called yet, but he's like, well, it's still a working title, so we're keeping that under wraps just now. So kind of like what they call the NDA type of agreement.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's one of those things. As soon as I know, as soon as they kind of like give me the green light, I'll be able to sort of put the word out. Then hopefully, I think they seem quite pleased with it. I think they're hoping that it's going to be something that everyone's going to be kind of pleased and proud about being involved with. So from some of the what they call the rushes, like when they show back some of the
Yeah.
stuff, it looks pretty good. Um, but who knows? Who knows with these
Oh,
things? You know.
well, I mean, it's fabulous, and I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for chasing what it is that you're going to do in life, and what helps you sleep at night and feel like you've got some enjoyment and some integrity. And I'm all for big risks and throwing things in. Hence me moving back onto boats and all this. And um, I mean, I haven't knocked it on the head, but I had a burgeoning career as a higher education lecturer, and I've knocked all that on the head to go back
Yeah.
to Smith, which is what I was years ago. And it might not be quite the same thing, but the jeopardy is very similar. And
Yeah.
and I think good luck to you, because it takes stones to do it, don't it?
It does, and and you go through, I'm sure, a lot of soul searching, and is this selfish? Is this the right thing? But as Polonius and Hamlet once said, "To thine own self be true."
Well, very much. I mean, again, I don't want to leverage anybody else's loss or anybody else's like emotional credit, or for want of a better term, by bringing this up. But one of the reasons that I um that sort of brought me back to all this and sort of prompted us to sort of come and do this from my side as well was, I was listening back to some old podcasts, a different podcast, the other day, which is Theo Delaney's Life Goals,
Mm,
uh, with a dear sort of friend of mine, Pete Ain, who sadly passed away
hmm.
last year. And one of the last podcasts we did, we paid tribute to Pete, and it sort of brought it all back to me. This fella that recorded this podcast, and he knew what the score was when he recorded it. And reflecting on his life, and how he sort of enjoyed it and made the most of his life, and that, and it brings it all home to you, and you think, this is why we do it, isn't it? This
Mm,
is why we throw it all in and go, no, I'm going to go and smack hot bits of metal about, and you're going to stand in front of cameras and damn the consequences, because
yeah.
before we do it, people will be talking about us in the past tense.
Well, that's it. I mean, in 50 years' time, we probably won't be here, and will anyone really even remember we were here? So you might as well just enjoy it, and yeah, anyway, I suppose we better get onto some football, do you think?
Well, yeah, otherwise this is going to turn into an impromptu therapy session, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
I don't mind that.
yeah,
Maybe we'll come back to that.
yeah.
So I don't think it's really worth too much, in terms of reviewing the last game, the Sheffield United game. We did what we had to do to get through that one. Couple of nice goals, but I think maybe what we should do is just kind of just try and wrap things up really in terms of the season. So, what were your thoughts on the season overall? Maybe a beginning, middle, and end, if you can go Lord of
Oh,
the Rings on
yeah.
us.
I mean, rather probably over the years of doing the this podcast in its many various guises with its many various hosts, I might have been constantly infuriating to many people, because I tend to be quite steady and not too reactionary. But in that very vein, I'm quite a content Spurs fan at the moment.
Mm,
Um, we've had the season that Ange told us we were going to have in August.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everything he said came to pass, and I know I sort of hark back to our pods that we did in August and September. Back when, late of this parish, people like Steve and Andy were still joining us. That really, we'd said then that it was going to be a rocky season, but a top 6 finish would be improvement, and we would be happy with that. And I think I've held quite true to that. I am quite happy with where we finished. It would have been nice to have got in the Champions League, but I don't think we're ready as a team for it. So I'm quite content with how things have gone. I mean, it would have been nice to have beaten some of the teams that we lost to. It would have been nice not to have had great big losing streaks, but generally speaking, the one thing I wanted from this season was to be entertained, and generally speaking, it's been entertaining, and that's my take on it, really. I think we can sort of separate the season into 3 parts, can't we? The pre-Chelsea at home run, the post-Chelsea at home slump, and then the sort of rocky last couple of months, sort of January onwards after the FA Cup. It's been very hit and miss, but it's been a side that's been plagued with injuries. And of course, I think, in all honesty, we did sell the most prolific goal scorer we've ever had at the club a little under a year ago. And I think that has to be taken into consideration when we look at the year we've had. So I'm happy, but like I say, I'm generally very happy. So, very happy, but generally quite content. So that's me. How about you?
Well, I'm glad you said that, Rich, because obviously there's been a fair degree of sort of to-ing and fro-ing and revisionism as you go through. But let's not forget, on the eve of the start of the season, that we sold probably our greatest ever player. We started a complete new project with a new manager, and we didn't really know what we were going to be getting, but in fact, some people seemed to, because there were some pundits that were suggesting, and I was looking back on this and thinking, did I get this right? And I was doing a little bit of research earlier today, and we were some of the outside favourites of relegation. People were pitched, I mean, people like, some of the pundits and Merson and all that kind of lot, thinking that we were massively going to struggle this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think any of us that, we were that doom and gloom, but it was an open book. We were thinking, really not really sure what this is going to be, but at least it's going to be much more exciting than what we've finished off with under Conte, because that was a horror show, and I think it left fans, feeling detached, unhappy. The promise of this so-called winner that was going to transform the club just left us feeling less than content with everything. And then very quickly, when he came in, I think he sensed what he needs to do in terms of the politics of this club. And I think that was interesting, the way he spoke to us. And we kind of got those, we can say his name now, Pochettino, he's left.
Yeah.
Chelsea.
Now he's a free agent. Yeah.
He's all right now.
Yeah.
But you kind of got those vibes again. He was talking in the similar ways about, not making us proud, but actually all that stuff about, how we join things up, how we make things work between the fans and the club. And yeah, I think like the season was kind of, as you just alluded to, really like a play in 3 acts, isn't it? Really, you've got the beginning part, which really got off to a storm, and we're thinking, blimey. I mean, people were saying, could we? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, anyone with a rational brain and would have, known that was obviously, things were going to go up and down. And Ange said it himself, didn't he? He said, look, even at the beginning, he said, this isn't always going to be like this. There's going to be some bumps in the road along the way. Just be ready for those. And I don't think anyone, was quite ready, because you get carried away. That's the job of fans, right? And that's why he keeps saying to us all the time, I'm not going to tell the fans how to think. Let them get carried away. But which was nice, it's instead of playing things down all the time, we're talking things up. And I think that's, when we come, we look, you talked about that middle section when we lost a lot of players. That really kind of fucked up our season, really, didn't it? That had such a negative impact on things. But he found a way. He found solutions. And then at the end there, I think, a lot of that skewed, I think, by the fact that so many games got deferred to the end, and they were tough games, and that
Mm,
kind of screwed us over a little bit at the end. But you look at it, right? At the very end, we finished fifth.
yeah.
Did many people predict we'd finish fifth? We were in, with a shout at the top four. Again, that would have been way above expectations. I'm not too unhappy with that. And that's not revisionism. Of course, if we'd have got into it, we'd have been crowing. But are we going to win it? And we're not ready for that yet. But we would have a shout potentially of the Europa Cup. So I think, like you say, really, it overall, when you step back from it, when you sort of take that sort of helicopter view of the whole thing and look at it overall, that it's a good season. It is a good season, and we've implemented a new style. The players will only get better at that next season, and I think that moreover, what he's done is he's just brought something to the club that apart from a few people, majority of us feel really positive about where we're going now. We feel like we've got an identity and a style and a vision, and we feel that the manager's pointing the way, and we need to follow that. And we'll come on to that in a minute, because some of that is echoed in some of his recent press conferences. But I do feel that he's showing us the way, and I think he's showing the club, the fans, and the players.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I think one of the things that we can say universally that's positive about the experience of having this man in charge of the club is that he's very heart on his sleeve and very open and very honest, in a way that Conte never was, in a way that Jose never was. They always had an agenda that was them first. Uh, and it's refreshing to get that. And obviously he has said some things over the year that's made us think, oh God, especially recently, is it beginning to go wrong behind the scenes or what have you? But of course, I think you can look too closely at that, and they're offhand comments that are either taken out of context, or maybe it's, I'm forever saying things when I get a rush of blood to the head that I think afterwards I didn't mean that. And I think universally I can say that he's breathed a whole load of fresh air into the club. And like you say, very much in a similar way to when Pochettino first arrived, at a time when huge sections of the fan base were completely disenfranchised from not only the team, but from the club as well, that he has been able um, to stop that rot, or to change the direction of the narrative, and to get us, at least thinking, oh God, well, all right, this isn't so bad. If not every week, then maybe the majority of the weeks, if I'm being if I'm being kind. But I think it's worked so well that we haven't spoken all year about Harry Kane, have we? That's the
No.
thing. This year, every week we could have been talking about not having Harry Kane in the team, and my experience has not been that, and I think that's down to him and the way that the team has unified around this new identity, and the way that there's been a bit of a smile, and if not a swagger, then at least we've lifted our heads up as a team.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And also the other thing about, I mean, I've been sent a couple of kind of, if you like, like little videos which are meant to, I suppose, provoke the fan base, because obviously social media is great at doing that. But a couple of Chelsea fans that I know that would just say, like, oh, this is exactly reminiscent the thing we're going to come on to in a second about Ange's press conference. Really echoes of Conte and echoes of Mourinho, and I'm like that. Hang on a second. I really don't think it is anything like that. That
No.
Yes, what he's doing is saying, some of the foundations need to be adapted, But the massive difference, Rich, is what he's saying is it's up to me now to solve this. I'm up for the job. And I know now more. There's things that I didn't think, and now they've made me think again, but I'm up for the job. Conte and Mourinho, there weren't enough buses to throw people under when the shit got going.
No, of
Like
course.
that. And basically it was the club's fault, it was everybody else's fault, and things are never going to change, and this club's never going to change, and they better, all that kind of, not Ange. He's like, okay, this upset me and that upset this, but am I up for the challenge? Hell yes. That's
Yeah,
his attitude, you know.
yeah, very much so. And I mean, what you've just said instantly reminded me of Conte in the, I think it was post FA Cup it might have been when we lost to Middlesbrough. I don't know if I'm the right man for this job. Do you
Yeah,
remember that press
yeah,
conference?
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you don't hear anything like this, do we? Even when we've been, roundly beaten. Um, yeah, I mean, I like I say, neither of us are sitting here saying the project is finished and that we are where we want to be, but we're certainly a lot closer to it than we were 12 months ago.
yeah. I mean, none of us truly know, that if it's all going to work out. But actually, what you are looking for is, is aspects that make you proud to support again, to go again, want to go again, and things that he's saying all the right things. He's telling us how we should aspire more. When people say to him things like in the press conference, if you'd have been offered fifth, would you have just bitten the hand off at the beginning of the season? And he says, no, I wanted
Mm,
first. And
mm,
okay, some people might look at that and think, well, that's delusional. We're Tottenham, we're nowhere near there, etc. He's got to start changing things and changing aspects of the club, and that includes trying to develop a winning mentality. Let's not have us being shy about or ashamed about thinking that we can't ever do it, because if we believe that, we won't ever do it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
mm,
Like anybody who knows an ounce about well-being and psychology knows that the conversation you have with yourself about making yourself better, if you like, is
mm,
is one of the most important things. And he's doing that in the sense of, like, coaching us all through. This is how we got to see ourselves. There's no point in saying, well, we might or we shouldn't, or we'll be lucky. It's like, no, we need to start thinking, actually, we can be really great. We can be. And I think that's where he's going. I think he understands, you know, that okay, it's a tanker to turn around, but
mm,
but it has, or like that, the people use that analogy of the elephant. It's got to want to turn,
mm.
and it won't, you can push it all you like, but it's got to want to turn. And that's what I think he's working on now.
Yeah.
He's trying to get everyone to go with him, trying to get that to, all to turn in the same direction and go in the same direction. So, should we jump straight ahead actually into the Ange's comments on the City game?
I was
Because I
going to
know,
say, I was just going to say, speaking of elephants, the one that's in the room at the moment is
yeah,
the Man City game that we've just
yeah.
had. So, what's your take on his post match words then?
Well, because his initial words, I know some people got upset, and I didn't. I'll tell you why in a second. And I know some people feel like he's rode back on things. And again, I'm not sure he's rode back on it, but I think he's kind of uh, just tried to be clear about it. And I think this, Rich, what is he supposed to say?
Yeah.
Right? He knows the situation. He's not a fool. Right, he's worked with Celtic Rangers. He knows the situation. Ali
Mm,
McCoist recently came out and said, "Look, if you were going to take a penalty, and it meant that Celtic would win the title, would you miss it?" And Ali McCoist said, "Yes, I would miss the penalty." Now,
mm,
Ange can't very well come out and say, we're going to throw this game. He wouldn't. One because he's the winner, but also it calls into question his integrity as a manager. You can't
mm,
do that. You can't be throwing games.
mm,
He's not going to then just put out all the kids, etc. He's got to play it as a professional. I'm sorry, but if you're as fans, it's completely different, right? It's a completely different thing. If you're a professional, you've got to turn in and you've got to do the job.
Mm,
And last thing you want is people casting aspersions on your character and your name by saying basically you didn't do your job.
yeah.
And by Christ, they would have. Okay. I mean, I know some people again are saying, "Oh, we didn't roll over them for them."
No,
In
no, no,
fact,
no.
some of people on Twitter were saying, "Hang on a second, so these players haven't got the memo." You
Mm,
know, Kulusevski came on. He hasn't got the memo. He nearly
yeah.
scored. And I don't believe that they rolled over. City are an incredible team. That said, I think Ange is, you know, has enough nous to know it's not the end of the world, that result. But
Mm,
he can't come out and say that, because he's a professional. If he says, "Yeah, we fielded a weakened team. Yeah, we rolled over," or any of that crap, he wouldn't. You can't. You just cannot say that. So I think he said everything. He handled it incredibly well, I thought. You could see he was stressed out. He said that, afterwards, this was one of the worst days of my entire football life, because he had people shouting at him, "Throw it." He's not gonna.
mm.
Yeah, how does that make him look? As a professional, he can't do that. So he's in a very, very, very difficult position, knowing how the fan base feel, knowing the jeopardy of this situation, but on top of that, having to do what's right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the points that he was making in the pre-match conference were more important, really. The way that, he said in that, we can't care what other people are doing. It's got nothing to do with us. We
Mm.
should only care about what we're doing.
Mm.
Um, and
Yeah.
I was completely right. I mean, I was really rather hoping that we were going to win it, because I was thinking at that point, well, Villa might not win both of their games. And, I mean, if Villa had dropped 3 points and we would have thrown that match, we'd be kicking ourselves.
Mm. Mm.
And
Yeah.
I don't care whether Arsenal would have won the league. One of my happiest years as a Tottenham supporter was 1991 when we won the FA Cup. Who won the league?
Mm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it made no fucking difference to me.
Well, I
Um,
mean, I think we're on different sides of the fence on that, but that's the beauty of the game. I mean, I know a lot of people were just kind of like, we should always want to win. I honestly, I do get that, and I, I've got no problem with that at all. I see why that's a very potent thing. And even on the day, even though I knew people that were there, I was in the States at the time, who kind of like felt really awful. It was like, almost dirty, like thinking, I want us to win, but I don't want us to win. It's like an awful situation to be in. Um,
mm,
the fact that, if they'd have won it, I would have hated that. I hated it. The fact that they would have won the league before we did, and we came so close. It would have just been endless, endless crap. That said, it was almost like a win-win situation. If we lost,
yeah.
they didn't win it, and if we won, great, we're back in the Champions League situation. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess it's an odd thing for me, and I know I'm in the minority in the respect that I genuinely couldn't give a fuck about anybody else's football club. I mean, I obviously, I detest Chelsea because I'm a human being, and I'm not saying I have anything like a soft spot for Arsenal or anything like that. I'm not making any of those claims. I couldn't give a shit if they fell off the earth tomorrow.
mm,
Um, you know, and it's genuinely I couldn't give a shit if they fell off the earth tomorrow. Um, and To me, it has always just been very simply about the 11 people that are on the pitch in lily white, and the rest of the world doesn't kind of exist for me. I'm not a tactical football fan in that regard. And I get it. It makes people's lives difficult. I work with West Ham fans and I work with Arsenal fans, and they love to have a pop, and actually they kind of leave me alone these days because they know it just sort of bounces off me because I don't care. You know, like um, I guess it's probably a strange character trait of mine rather than me saying I think that's how everybody should be. I'm very good at not giving a toss about anybody else and what they do, really.
Ah.
In the same respect that I don't care about Man City doing this record-breaking 4 things in a row, you know. I like it doesn't matter to me.
No, I
couldn't.
mean, the only thing
I'm
that bothers me is telling other people how they should support. So I'm
yeah,
completely like, I know you were like that. I know Andy was like that as well, late of this parish.
yeah.
You know, and you can't tell people how to support. I mean,
No.
I really dreaded the thought of them winning it. You know, and wasn't unhappy when we lost that game. And you're the opposite. But we all support our team in different ways, and we're all
Yeah.
coming at it from you know, want the same thing ultimately.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so
Ultimately, we want us to be successful.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, I guess my take on it was always that if Woolwich won the league, it wasn't because it wouldn't have been because we lost to Man City. It would be because we failed to beat them twice this season.
But I
You
also
know,
like to look at it the other way. The reason they didn't win the league is because we took 2 points off them
because
at
we
their
took two
place,
points from Arsenal. Yeah, yeah. It's
and
brilliant.
with
I know. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But yeah.
anyway.
Anyway, I mean, I think enough ink and what have you megabytes spilled over that over his comments for City. I mean, shall we sort of move on? And pretend it never happened and talk about some other things.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball maybe at you here. There's been some people that have started to be Ange out. And I just wondered what your sort of take on that is. You know, the accusation, of course, from some fans is this will never work. It's too naive. What do you think?
I just think they should get a life. Genuinely, like, I mean, fucking hell, what do you want? You know, like what, like, I, yeah, I know
It
what they want. They want Spurs to win everything, and they want it to happen now, and it ain't gonna
yeah.
fucking happen, right? And you know, we have to look at it like this, okay? Um, the reason it hasn't worked this season as well as it could do is because the squad isn't big enough. The reason the squad isn't big enough is because we've had to ship out loads of players that we've had hanging around for years that are not good enough. And in the middle of all that, we also, as we've already said, sold the greatest goal scorer we've ever seen in our lifetimes, right? And, you know, typically too close to the end of the window for us really to do any serious recruitment to replace him. We've gone into a season with you know, ostensibly a centre forward in Richarlison who scored, I think, 2 goals last year and spent most of the time injured, and has got ongoing injury worries, and he spent most of this season injured as well. Albeit, you know, he bagged a few goals when he was fit, and that was lovely to see that he's capable of it, if not physically capable. But you know, we went into the season with 2 centre halves that can play that system. And I don't think, and it might be me giving the manager a pass. I don't think Ange will have gone into a meeting with the recruitment team that wasn't all fully in place at the time. You know, I think it was Scott Munn wasn't actually
No, he wasn't. No, no. Yeah.
he wasn't there when the season started yet. I don't think he would have gone into a meeting with any of those people who actually were already there and gone, it's all right. We've got, you know, this guy, Mickey van der Ven, who's totally unproven at the moment, and Romero, who's got a bit of a hot head on him but can play. That'll do. And I think that was apparent by, the moment that we started to get suspensions and injuries with M2. It will laid the squad bare, and the reason that we didn't finish comfortably in the top 4 is because of the points that we dropped at places like Wolves, and I can't remember who else we went away and lost to, perhaps whoever it was around that sort of time, after the Chelsea home game when the team really got thinned out, was because we were trying to play players that we've been trying to get rid of in those positions. You know, players like Eric Dyer, who was still at the club at the time. And it's pure transition season football. It's these guys. You can't, like you said a few minutes ago about turning the elephant round. You know, You can't turn something as big as that round so quickly. And I don't think there's
How do you answer this then, Rich? Because one of the things that people were saying is, and being devil's advocate
yeah.
here, um, mate ball's been found out. It's been rumbled.
But I mean, yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think there is a bit of an element of that, but I'm going to be my answer to it is if you look at that Man City game a couple of weeks ago, for great portions of that game, we were playing a slightly adapted, different style, and we were pushing them from both sides, squeezing the pitch up, and really stifling the way that they could play for huge quantities, through the middle of that game. And I think that shows that they are developing. The guy's been there less than a year. He's not got a full squad to work with. He's not got enough people to cover. I mean, when you lose a player like Maddison, the only real player that we've got that can be as creative as him as Bentancur, and he's coming back from a major injury, and he's patchy form wise because of it, and so I think you've got to have the players to work with the system, and you've also got to have the time to work with the old squad in that system. And so while you're firefighting and you've lost a load of players in a threadbare squad, and you're bringing players in, essentially you're starting from scratch again with them because you haven't had the opportunity to give them game time. So I think phase one of Ange ball or mate ball, yeah, I think teams quite quickly went, all right, we can stifle this, we can slow it down, we can break it up. And yes, that's right. But the response to that is when he comes out against the most successful team in Premier League history at the end of the season. Yes, they did beat us, but like you say, Son should have scored, Kulusevski should have scored, and they got their second goal in the very, very, very death of the game. So 2-0 isn't a reflection of the game that was played on the day, I don't think. I think the response is, even he said, we have not yet had an opportunity to start working individually with the players on exactly what their roles are. We have only been able to work in broad brushstrokes, to paraphrase.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I would say. I would say, get a fucking life.
This doesn't translate to a podcast, but I just want to do like a bullseye. I think you just fucking, scored an absolute William Tell one there. Just gone straight and split the arrow as well.
Well,
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, look, you look at the three most successful managers so far, for a while anyway. Klopp and Arteta latterly, and Pep. He's done better than all of those in their first season. All of them.
Yeah.
He, on top of that, he's embedding a system which is very high risk, high reward. We saw that at the beginning. And it was really working. Okay, it may have been some degree of novelty, but hang on a second. I'll counter that with: do you think that everyone's an idiot who's a manager in the league who can't work out how to sort of play against that kind of pressing and high line? That that they only have to watch one game and then they'll look at what the last game was and work that out. It's not like they had to wait a third of the season before they started to work him out. Come on. Some of the best managers in the world are in this league.
Yeah.
And we turned Liverpool over at one point. Do you remember? I mean, Matip with his bionic leg scored that winner in the for us in with his own goal. But we were we tore them a bit to bits. They went down to 9 men. We were all over them. We had an incredible I think we threw Arsenal onto the back foot at their own place. And that that's not luck. That's not.
No, it's not. It's not luck. And I mean, yes, both of those games came quite early in the season where if you were going to be the devil's advocate in this conversation, you could say at that point they were still working it out, playing against us in a way. But still, he was able to take a side that had been, routinely smashed about by him in the previous season.
Yeah.
And did that. And, I think, I think it stands scrutiny looking at it like this. Yeah, people did work out how to play against us, but we're starting to evolve, and you can see that evolution.
Yes,
You know,
yes, yes.
and huge parts of that side are either new or having to play a completely new system. They're having to play without the focal point that this club has had for the 9 years previously.
Yeah.
And they're having to do it all on their own shoulders. I mean, Son's stepped up and he's had to the captain, and he's aging now, and his game's having to
Yeah.
evolve. I mean,
It's a high intensity game to prolong for the whole season, and I think they've got to build up to that as well. And of course,
yeah,
then when we did get that injury phase, that not only knocked us back, but you've got players coming back from injury. I mean, what Madison himself said, this was the worst injury of his whole career.
yeah.
And so there were a number of players that were feeling their way back. Well, Basuma had malaria.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of these players are coming back from a point where they're probably one of the lowest ebbs, and it's a high intensity style, and it's a new style. And
Yeah.
okay, I'm not trying to find excuses here, because there's some games that we were all tearing our hair out and thinking we should have done much better there. These are eminently beatable sides, but
Mm,
it's for them as well, a learning curve. You can see, I mean, that game where Ange went absolutely ballistic. I've forgotten the game now. When he was on the sideline and he was screaming at them. I've never seen him so angry. I think it might have even been the Chelsea game, the second Chelsea game, and he went ballistic. Stop passing it backwards. And he
mm,
says, at the moment, it's not that he's throwing the players under the bus, but what he's saying is that they still yet to just completely trust that they have to do it this way. The instinct of a lot of players is to play safe and play it back, and and knock it around at the back, etc. But that's just not his way. He's got to get to a point which is going to take a while for those players just to completely go, all right, this is the way.
mm,
And I think but I just judging by his recent press conference, it feels more like he's at ease with it now. He's like, I feel that we've made progress. That's the thing he's always said. He don't matter where we finish, I will need to feel we've made progress. And in his recent comments, I think he said exactly that. He says, I feel much better about next season. And of course, I feel very comfortable with knowing what we've yet to do and who does and who doesn't fully
mm.
not only buy it, but also maybe isn't quite up to it. It's like, I mean, Emerson Royale, players like that, Hoiberg, put in a massive shift, but they're just not right for the system. They'd be great somewhere else. I mean,
Mm.
look at Eric Dyer.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
the first team regular at Bayern,
yeah.
but he's just not right for that system. Don't mean we've
Well,
just offloading donkeys. And
yeah,
when that happens, it just means that there's a very specific type of player, and I think that's where the evolution's got to come.
yeah, totally. And I mean, I think the point of the in and outness of that first 11, maybe, or first 16, is is sort of exacerbated, like you say, when you've got players that are coming back from massive injuries or from illnesses like malaria, which is a massively debilitating thing, kills
Mm.
more people globally, than virtually anything else. It's not like having a fucking cold.
No.
and
Yeah.
and and yet they're like, the moment that they're kind of ready, they're needed and they've got to come back.
Mm, mm.
And I mean, you look, Rodrigo Bentancur had a really, really nasty injury. And he had to come up, and and him coming back into the side sort of coincided with this bad patch where we were losing players, and Madison was out for a long time, and of course it's the first time he's played that system. And not only is he having to adapt to the new system, he's having to come back from the injury, and he's having to start at 100 miles an hour because the responsibility is on his shoulders to fill in. Mickey van der Ven's a perfect example. He had the hamstring injury, and everybody says players that come into a Postecoglou side have these hamstring problems because of the amount of sprinting they have to do, because of that quick turnaround and how they have to move up and down the pitch more rapidly to cover. And so he went out with a hamstring injury, and we were so desperate to have him back that he probably came back too quickly and suffered as a consequence.
Yeah.
Um,
And our
so
depth wasn't. wasn't
No.
anywhere near what it should have been. Like now that is where we are going to need to make sure that, if you go into several tournaments next year, and the reason why you can do well is because you're going to give some of your very, very top players time to rest, because actually
Mm.
you can bring in a second player who is not far off that at all, and you've got a really strong bench. This is what City do, this is what a lot of those teams do. They bring in a player that's by themselves will probably be, walk into most sort of decent clubs in the country.
Yeah.
But to be at that elite level, they're the ones that can offer an alternative or rest to some of those players. Or when as is likely to happen, those players get injured. You're not going to have any, if or much of a drop off. Whereas before, we were making hats out of sow's ears.
Mm.
We had some players in there we would never have played.
Yeah, yeah, very much. I mean, I think, the interesting comparison I would draw is at a club like Liverpool. If you think when they bought Firmino, he
Mm,
was at the club for a year before he kicked a ball.
mm,
And it allowed him to become acclimatized to the system, to train with the squad, to understand the culture of the club, to become embedded within that team. And then he was introduced as a player.
yeah, yeah,
think it's
exactly.
Firmino. I think it's Firmino I'm thinking of. It's one of them that they signed him and he vanished.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
because he just did, and I mean, you think about it, Dragusin came in halfway through the season as cover for defence, and he's been playing
yeah, yeah,
virtually since he arrived because of necessity. And he needed that. He needed this 6 months to
yeah,
embed himself in the club, to learn the system, to get the fitness and the sharpness up for the Premier League, which, if you're coming from anywhere else in the world, the Premier League is quicker. That's what all the players say. I
yeah,
never realized how much more intense it was over here until I got here.
yeah.
That's
Look at Brian Hill for an example. Um, massive expectations for him. Thought to be someone who could be the next David Silva. We traded Lamella and paid what 15, 16 million for him because we thought he would be. By all accounts, everyone in Spain is raving about him and thought he's going to be the next big thing.
Mm.
And he may well go back to Spain, which is probably where he'll end up because he's a technically gifted player. He's a lovely, you can see when he glides around on the ball. But for the Premier League, it's a different beast, and I think he struggled to cope. He's not a donkey. He'll go
No.
back there and be an excellent player.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he is going to be one of them players that's going to knock us out of a tournament one day, and we're going to
Yeah,
go, everybody will go, why didn't he play like that when he played for us? And you'll think, well, because the only time he ever got match time was when we were 1-0 down with 5 minutes to go, and everybody thought he could fucking do something,
mm,
And
mm.
and the culture at the club and the depth of the squad at the time meant that there's always so much pressure on players to perform immediately
Yeah,
that players
yeah,
like that do not get time to adapt. And
yeah,
yeah, we can all sort of say, well, your Luka Modric's and your Berbatovs didn't need that time to adapt, but they're once in a generation players.
yeah. But to be actually honest, so we said this before, but Modric did need a bit of time to adapt. He adapted, reasonably quickly, but he, there were times where everyone was saying he's too small,
Yeah,
he's too slight. He's getting done every time, and I think what he had though is that football brain. Because he was, he was that type of player you could bash around and he would get up. But I think we said this before. He was that sort of person that once he'd worked out that he could just get, got the ball on the half turn and step up a bit quicker. He was able then to sort of to beat that press or to beat the attacker coming onto him and set up. He was our metronome, wasn't he? Really, but I
yeah,
think
yeah.
but it took him a bit of time to adjust. And then again, I distinctly remember people saying he'll never make it in the Premier League. He's too slight, too small.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing, just to sort of draw that comparison to a close as well, really, is the difference in between him and not just him as a player and Hill or whoever is coming into our side now, is that he had the benefit of having players like Tom Huddleston and Sandro around him who were fucking great units.
Mm,
And when
mm.
when he was getting bullied, they were able to interchange position and markers.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah,
he had some physical protection in the respect that there were big, burly players around him that could lay one on somebody, on his behalf, as
yeah,
it were.
yeah,
And we
yeah.
don't really have any players like that in the side now, do we? I mean, we've
We
got
do.
Romero, you know.
Yeah, but that is, he's a different type of player. He's got all out aggression. Having said that, since he's been made vice captain, he's been the most sensible they've ever seen him. Although, did you see him the other day when Emerson went down? I don't know if you saw this video doing the rounds, and Emerson went down after being sort of invert air quotes fouled. Romero just walked up to him and booted him on the floor and pulled him up and just said, "Get up."
I hadn't seen that, no, but yeah, brilliant. I
Yeah,
mean, on him, I mean, maybe we should sort of move it on a little bit.
yeah.
Standout players of the season then in this. I think Romero is quids in my man of the year.
Do you know what? It's really, really hard to argue against that. It's going to be between him and either a doggy or Van der Ven. And the other players have, there've been I mean, Son again, he's had quietly a really good season. Been captain and stepped up and done all that. But I think I'm tempted to go in the same as you, Romero. I think he's shown real leadership qualities, really sort of calmed his game in the sense that he's not lost any of his hunger, but he's not lost his head the way he used to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that. I mean, it's probably helped by the fact that he's playing alongside Mickey van der Ven most of the time, who is probably a very calming influence on him in the respect that he knows that he's got somebody alongside him who can catch up, can fill a space, can cover, whereas before he was playing alongside Davinson Sanchez or Eric Dyer, and both of them who had the Turner speed of continental drift. And so he must have always been thinking, fucking hell, it's got to be me that does this all the time, and led him into a lot of them rash challenges. I mean, Van der Ven's been a revelation. I will say, perhaps another reason that Romero's improved so much is because he's got Vicario behind him, and what a sign.
Yeah, yeah. What about moment of the season, Rich?
I don't have a single moment really. I mean, I think my standout memory of the season is that second half away at Aston Villa. I mean, that was just joyful. Because Villa were in a bloody good run of form at the time. And we were not quids in to do what we did to them by any means. And we
Destroyed
didn't just we fucking destroyed them.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's I haven't got a moment, but 45 of them, and it's that second half.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to say. I mean, that was a standout, I think, in terms of the way we played. I think that was one of those ones everyone went, crikey, Spurs really stood up to be counted there. And we haven't seen that for a while, and I think people really kind of, again, I think that started to sort of make people really hopeful again. But I do think that was one of the most positive things of the season. For me, for better and for worse, possibly that first Chelsea game, the home game, only because it buggered our season, but it also made us realize that a lot of these players actually do buy into what he's saying, because even though some of the pundits were going, "Oh, this is incredibly naive," actually there was a moment, I think, and we talked about this in one of the podcasts at the time, where we nearly actually got the goal that would have, I can't remember, it would have drawn or won it at the and then it switched, didn't it?
Yeah, there was a moment we had a goal disallowed for offside, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't remember if it was an equaliser or a goal that was going to put us ahead. But as a moment to remember of the season, while that check was being done, it went round the players, and all of the Chelsea players on their faces were, what the fuck is happening? They just expected us to die. And instead of it, we played them off the fucking
Yeah,
field.
we did.
No,
And in fact, actually, Rich, in that first 15, 20 minutes, they hadn't got a clue what had hit them. We absolutely tore them to bits. I can't quite yet work out. I mean, obviously the Suns goal, which was slightly offside, it never counted, did it? And then, of
yeah,
course, then Romero got sent off. And I think
yeah,
things started to kind of unravel from that point, because I think that's like almost like what Ange has alluded to recently. Things are a bit fragile at times, and I think
yeah,
that's where we got to be stronger. But the
yeah,
fact is that with 9 men, we were still looking to win the game. And
yeah,
oh yeah, I mean, in the very last, in added time, don't forget, in
yeah,
added time,
yeah.
we were out on blowing out of our asses, and and they scored a couple of goals to make it look,
Look
much more
comfortable.
flattering. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but
it wasn't.
what we did in that time, I think a lot of fans went away thinking, yeah, this kind of bravery is all you can ask for. All you can
Mm.
ask for is just that you just give it everything.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's a pretty season defining moment for me in terms of my experience of Spurs fandom lately as well. In the respect that I listened to an awful lot of people criticize the naivety of it, and I listened to an awful lot of people talk them down. Oh God, they were stupid. It was this, it was that, it was the other. And yes, it went on to affect our season quite badly. I think the biggest problem that we had from that game was the fact that was when Madison picked up his injury. But that
Mm,
had nothing to do with us playing with 9 men. That was a bad thing in and of itself, right?
yeah,
But that was the thing that gave us the big hangover because we lost the creativity going forward for what was it, 7, 8 weeks that we
yeah,
were away
yeah.
after, right? But I think the thing that really got to me about it all was I was super fucking proud of them because
Mm,
they could have beaten us 4-1 with a whimper. You
mm,
know, we could have put 9 men behind the ball and they'd probably still scored enough goals to have beaten us. And the
yeah, yeah.
scoreline might have been the same. And everybody would have said Spurs got a fucking whipping and blah, 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 blah. But they didn't. They went, right, we're going to fucking bollocks to it. We're going to have a go at this. And I was really proud of them. And I was really, really impressed with it. And I was really cheered by it. Because, like you say, it was that moment when you think they're buying into this. They're on board,
Mm.
and it was the shot. The fuck, nobody could believe what is happening here. Spurs are still playing football. Spurs. This is Tottenham. We know Tottenham. They should have rolled over by now. And I came away with it thinking, I don't care that we've lost 4-1. I think that was a fucking damn fine, good go at it, and that's what I want to see happen in that adversity. And everybody else are going, oh god, it was terrible. It was so naive, and I just thought, oh fuck the lot of you, you know.
Do you know what?
Like,
It's a counterpoint to that game where we needed to win in Europe when Conte was in charge and he brought on Sanchez.
exactly that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I
You
mean,
know?
God, missed that spirit. I know it wasn't the same, and I know it's possibly a false comparison to draw. But in losing that game, it made me feel a lot like when we lost Yoel's first North London derby, when we lost that 5-4. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That was one of the most enjoyable games I've ever watched, and we lost it at home to Arsenal. And I remember coming away from that and thinking, something's happening here.
Mm,
Something's happening.
mm,
Because do you
yeah,
remember at the time they'd given the
yeah,
assistant manager the job, and we were all like, "What the fuck's going on?"
yeah.
Uh, there was that sort of joke going about at the time that um, Jack Santini, his job was to make Tottenham play like France, but all he ever achieved was making France play like Tottenham. Um, and then Yol came in and he did this interview about the name Tottenham Hotspur making the hair stand up on your neck and that, and I thought, oh, hang on, what's all this then? And
Mm,
then they
mm,
turned in that, and I thought something's happening here, and I felt
yeah.
very similar after that game against Chelsea. And I don't think it was the way that we played that screwed everything up. I think it was Madison getting the
Nah.
injury.
And if you're going to go down, 3 points is 3 points, whether it's 2-1 or 4-1. And if you're going to go down swinging. And we
Go,
did, and we nearly actually landed, the sucker punch.
yeah, yeah, and I know it's a very Tottenham thing, isn't it, to eulogise about games where we've got hammered, but I think there's an awful lot that we can look back on that game and go, bloody hell,
Yeah.
what a game that was to see.
So on a final note, are there any flops of the seasons?
I don't think we could. I don't think we can fairly say so. Really, I think Bissouma's had a really bad season, but like you say, I mean, he picked up that suspension early on, and I think he was carrying an injury, and then he went to AFCON and came back with malaria. So he's had a pretty stop-start season, and I think even Ange said very recently that he's obviously he's been injured again and he's been out again, and he said he had only just started feeling like himself again before he picked up the injury that's kept him out the last couple that he's missed. And a lot of people I talked to have said, "Oh, Bizouma's had a terrible season. We ought to get rid of him." And I think I understand his performances have been bad, but I think he's got some quite strong mitigating circumstances for it. I think there's a lot of players in there that look very much out of place. I think Højbjerg is the prime example, and Gio Celso, although he's had a couple of good performances, cameo performances, I just don't think he's ever going to cut it at Spurs. And maybe Richarlison again with his injuries, because when he's been fit, he's looked good, and he's scored goals when we've needed him to. But I don't know about flops. I don't think I can say flops. I've been more heartened by the players that I've seen, by perhaps Sarr coming and really stamping himself on the side, by Destiny, by Pedro Porro really has come on leaps and bounds this year as well. Scored a few important goals. He scored the one the other day. So I think it's quite a positive take. I mean, maybe you've got it's a different perspective.
No, I'm scratching my head as well. I mean, okay, you might say Werner maybe, but he has had some positive contributions throughout. I mean, his end product has been disappointing. I wouldn't say he's a flop, but disappointing. I'm not sure we'll end up taking up that option. You might say that perhaps let's think.
Isn't it? We're having to rack our brains.
Yeah, Hill, I thought he might do better this season. But no, no real. I wouldn't say like we brought someone in and they just absolutely fallen flat. I thought, our acquisitions have been strong. They've all seemed to be really good, players that we brought in. I think Werner, when he came in, we really needed that outlet because we were so short at that time with the injuries that we had. But he's done a job. He's done a job, and I think that'll be about it.
Yeah, I think he's looked pretty good, Werner. I like his physicality. I mean, he's strong on the ball in that final third. Yeah, his end product is a bit Soldado-ish, but if we have him for a different role than as a target man, then maybe that's not such an issue, And of course, they used him a couple of times that I saw him. That they moved Son across and played him out on the left where Son is, which allows us to use Son in a slightly different role and allows him to come in and affect the game more. So maybe that's a more important contribution. I don't know, but I think I wouldn't be disappointed if they did take up that option with him, because I think he has got potential.
Yeah, I did think that at one point, but at the moment I'm thinking there's money that could be spent. I mean, I'd love to get Eze in, and I do think, like Ange said just yesterday, we really need to beef up that front line. So I think we're going to need to get a striker.
Yeah, we definitely.
I think even Tony would be a great bet. He's a proven goal scorer. He fits in with the English quotient that we were going to need in terms of registering players for Europe and or for the league. Eze would be the same as well. He's English as well. So I think that those two would be huge upgrades.
I think they would. I mean, I know we spoke about this off air because I'd sort of understood it that Tony was more likely to go to Arsenal now, but you don't think that's the case.
No, I mean, I think they've got their sights on others now, and it seems to be the path is opening up for him. I think he's got 1 year in his contract with I forgot who he's with now. Brentford. It's Brentford, that's it. And I think we're probably looking at 40, 50 million or something like that. He's 28. but he's a proven goal scorer. He's still got a number of years ahead of him. I think he's a really good player. People have questioned his attitude, obviously, with some of the stuff he said about the Gooners before, and also with with the betting stuff. But I think, if Ange wants, it's good enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be at all disappointed to see him come in. I think we definitely need him. Whatever the question is, unfortunately, I don't think Richarlison is the answer. That said, I don't think we should sell him. I think he and I think maybe what he needs is a year where he's not expected to play every week, because he's had, ongoing injury troubles, and perhaps there's something that needs a little bit more of a long-term convalescent solution.
We're going to be in 4 competitions next year, so you're going to need not just one striker anyway.
Yeah, very much so. And Son's getting a bit older now. We can't always rely on him to remain fit and to we get goals from all around the team now, but we definitely need another striker, though, don't we? That's
definitely. And I think a number 6, I don't know yet who that will be. I, to be honest, I've not really researched the market very well, but that kind of player I think Basuma would be a good squad player. For me, he's shown that he's probably not kind of the sort of player who can influence the game enough. It may be that we're talking about him having malaria, etc., and maybe that he'll come back stronger again. But I just feel at the moment that he's upgradable, and I think that's what we've got to do. I think that, when you look at all those top teams, they've got a Rodri, or they've got a Declan Rice, or that kind of player.
Aren't they?
Yeah, you've got to be ruthless, and there's no room for any kind of sympathy in that situation. And I think that he would be a key, that would be a key area, that number 6 role, that and a striker.
And I think it's the one thing that Spurs has been guilty of as a club, for whatever reason, whether it's financial or for want of deals that they thought were done that weren't done, or whatever. But we have been guilty of holding on to players for far too long when we need to be upgrading on them. And this will be the first full summer window where this recruitment team will have been in place. So let's see what happens. And I read recently that Vicario was an Ange signing. He'd been trying to sign him for Celtic for a couple of years.
Right.
Maybe he's got somebody else up his sleeve that he's already.
Yeah. Well, in Ange we trust.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I certainly do. So yeah. Anyway, that was a season, mate.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll be back again in August, possibly. I mean, if we do, because it's I enjoy having the chat with you, Rich. So maybe we will, but let's see. Hopefully you guys out there can, if you do like it, can start pushing it, and maybe reaching out to us. But we'll see. I mean, maybe there's been a bit of a phase where I lost my interest in it a little bit, but having this chat today, I think kind of it's started to rekindle the fires.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. Like I said, personally, it's been a difficult 9 or 10 months for me, and unfortunately for me, football really had to take a back seat because there were far more pressing things to be dealt with. But absence as always makes the art grow fonder, doesn't it? And if there is a listenership out there that wants to cope with me telling them to get a fucking life, then fair play. I will indulge them in that, But I mean, largely speaking, I know I don't know anything about football, so disregard my opinions on anything. So
either way, I'm sure we got a few quid in that swear jar from the Pochettino swear jar. Remember? We need to have a couple of pints when I see you next at the next home game.
Yeah, very much so, mate. Yeah, let's hope to get together soon. And in the meantime, enjoy a nice, stress-free few weeks of not having to worry about whether or not we need to throw a game.
And on that note, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
you know, there's no place on earth I wouldn't want to be than right here, you know, in this minute of trying to bring success to one of the biggest football clubs in the world. The basic underlying principles that I want my team to play football that scares the life out of every opposition, mate. That's kind of the end game.